welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you so much for making this your first podcast for NBA coverage. Remember, you like what you're hearing, you're on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think. You're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Spotify. Make sure you leave that 5-star review. You do that, we'll keep producing that content. We actually have some real basketball to talk about. We're recording here on Wednesday morning after opening night of NBA action. Sadly, it wasn't a pretty one for the Knicks. We're going to get into their matchup with the Celtics. We'll also talk a bit about the Lakers and the Timberwolves. Now we take a little look into the rookie extensions and veteran extensions we've seen over the past few days. But before we get into it, Chris, how you doing, man?
Dude, I'm good. And this is, like you said, opening night. And man, I just saying I gotta get my sleep schedule back in order because I forgot what it was like just trying to stay awake for that last game, any like midnight. But we're here, we're ready to go, ready to talk about it. And like you said, your Knicks. Why don't we just start there, man? They proved that they really wanted to close the gap on the champs. They made all the moves necessary. They made unexpected moves. And most recently, the massive deal to get Karl Anthony Towns in a Knicks jersey. And I think there's a lot of room for overreactions, but let's just start with maybe the other team, the champs, who deserve the right to be talked about first here because I think they showed that number one, that chip on the shoulder that everyone's talking about in the media, that's pretty real. I think Tatum may be showing that he's still got a little bit left in order to like level up as a player. And they just showed that they are still the same team. They are still the favorites, and they're going to continue to be performing at the level that they did last year. That same tenacity they had. Man, what did it feel like to just look at what they did on opening night, first game of the season, just as a statement win?
Yeah, I mean, we want to jump straight into an overreaction. Just say MVP season loading for Jason Tatum. The shot is fixed. It's more than fixed. The shot was looking absolutely insane last night. He went 8 for 11 from deep, 37 points, 4 boards, 10 assists. He was just red hot. Definitely looked like a kind of guy that's going out there with something to prove this year. And then the Celtics, of course, they were imperious. They were so impressive. Don't get me wrong, the Knicks did them a lot of favors. The consistent open looks that they were getting, which definitely helped. But that the way that they can shoot the three ball is just so hard to compete with because they have every player on their team is capable of averaging multiple makes a game on good efficiency. And when you have that, it's just a scary thought, especially in this modern NBA and what the Celtics are also capable of doing to your team defensively. And they have that firepower offensively. It's just scary, and they just made it sure to go out there opening night, not leave any doubt about it. We're the champs, we are the favorites, and if you're thinking otherwise, you're wrong.
Absolutely wrong. And I love on opening night, we got opening day for our podcast here, regular season. We got word of the week brought back to you by Ronan Gaine. Imperious, dude, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Celtics, Imperious, assuming power, authority. Dude, you're always teaching me words every week. I gotta keep on my toes here. I gotta come up with something next week you don't know. But I think that's a perfect word. I mean, the Celtics just looked at another level. And I think it's too soon to say anything about the Knicks. I think before we get into all that, I think I want to preface that. Like everything we say about the Celtics right now is pretty simple. Maybe the less simple part is, trying to predict how much better Tatum could be if that shooting efficiency goes up. And we saw him last year be much more of a balanced player that was moving the ball better and part of a system. But is there room in this system for Tatum to also be an MVP? I think that's a really intriguing question. If we see him be as aggressive as he was, taking shots off pull-up threes, really taking some shots that I think he got away from last season at the maybe not the expense, the opposite, at the benefit of the team, so that they can get better ball movement. But it didn't feel like it was out of the flow. So that's one interesting question about the Celtics. But for the Knicks, as we jump into it, let's just put a big asterisk. It's one game. They traded for Cat, what, 2-3 weeks ago? I'm losing track of time already, but they've had one regular season game under their belt. So we're not going to freak out. But I think it's worth talking about. They just played the best offense in basketball, and we saw their defense. Let's start with the defense. What did we see there? Because for me, it was not pretty.
Horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. Everyone pretty much looked lost on the defensive end, didn't really know what they're doing, like especially in that first half. Like Mikal Bridges didn't seem to have any idea what he was doing on the defensive end. There was no there was no real cohesion. There was no real communication. It was just everything defensively was just really, really bad. Yes, the Celtics went absolutely off. They tied an NBA record with 29 three-pointers. At one point, they were 29 of 50, shooting 58% from deep, which is just insane. And yes, they were making tough shots. Yes, they are just a really good three-point shooting team, and that's what you get to do when you have five out pretty much on the floor at all times. But it was open looks, the ball movement, the
Yeah.
offensive rebounds, the Knicks, just everything just looked like such hard work, and every Knicks player just kind of looking over their shoulder constantly, like what am I supposed to be doing here? It was yeah, Tibbs has got some work to do there. Obviously, it's tough when you're going into that environment. It's ring night, it's banner night, such a big atmosphere. Celtics are red hot, ready to go. But yeah, the Knicks got embarrassed on the defensive end last night.
Yeah, it felt like the plan was to keep the Celtics out of the paint, to prevent Celtics from. I mean, what they do is they'll attack closeouts, they'll attack mismatches, start getting downhill, and that's how they start to spray the ball and move the ball around the perimeter. But I mean, the Celtics are also they're an offensive machine, and they know how to get their ball moving when you're in rotation. And the Knicks, I felt the help defense was too much there. I felt they were too eager to send help to the middle. And there's just always a wide open corner. And they are the best 3-point shooting team in the league. They are the best corner shooting team in the league. And like they have four. And if you count Al Horford, who in his own right is an excellent passer, they have five capable playmakers out there on the perimeter. So they just watching the Celtics dissect the Knicks defense, I think the reason why it's kind of an overreaction is that the Knicks are learning to play defense with Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor, who I think in his own right played fine. This wasn't a, hey, we can't play defense with Karl-Anthony Towns out there. I think it was more of a system thing where you're overhelping on a team that's going to pass the ball at the immediate sign of pre-rotation, and that's how they're going to get open looks. So I think the Celtics are probably the worst team to expose them for how they try to play defense here. You play most other teams in the NBA, they're going to miss some of those, especially this. I mean, this is like one of the hottest shooting nights the Celtics have had ever. So, like, really
One of the
unfair to
hardest shooting
kind
as
of go
anyone
on
has
a run
had
there.
ever.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So, I think there's room to clean that up. It was clear that the Celtics were really, really trying to target Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. They were putting Jalen Brunson in pick and roll actions every single time that they possibly could, and defense overreacted, and the rotation just wasn't there. And that's just something that they're going to have to continue to figure out as the season goes on.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously, it was bad, but it's not like okay, this can't work. This is already we're already in trouble here. Like it's definitely nothing like that. Like at least on the positive side for the Knicks, Deuce McBride looked great.
Oh my God.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I
if
want to get
that's
to.
the sort of impact we're going to see for this season, if he's like his scoring off the bench, his production off the bench is going to be so vital to the Knicks' success this year. And he just looked unbelievable. 22 points, 8 of 10 from the field, 4 3-pointers made. Everything just looked really smooth. He was the only guy out there where he actually looked like he was confident. He actually looked like he was in charge whenever the ball was in his hands. And if that's a sign of things to come, really, really big for the Knicks this year.
Yeah. I mean, the Knicks have how many true playmakers? Like true playmaker, Jalen Brunson. And I think Mikal Bridges is kind of a question mark because they had that experiment in Brooklyn, and this is just a very different situation. So I think there's some thought as to like how Mikal could adapt here in New York and maybe, bring some of what he did as a creator in Brooklyn to the Garden. But I think you got to look at Deuce and take a real good long look and think about, okay, is he actually our second option on the perimeter? So I think there's just a lot of standing around from OG.
Yeah.
A little bit like Bridges got more active in the second half. That's what we're happy to see. But I think Deuce was consistently looking to get his shot and looking to be aggressive, and something that we didn't see really at all from OG. We didn't see, in an effective way from Mikal. So I'm really excited for that. he's really going to slot in and fill Dante DiVincenzo's role really well. And if this is just the beginning for him, I'm really high on how far he can go this year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like obviously it was great to see like as soon as he came into the game, he made a bucket. He made a tough bucket too. And like obviously he got that and one early last night. And those are just great signs that he is continuing to develop that 3-point shot. He's continuing to become a more aggressive scorer, which we're absolutely gonna need. He needs to fill the gap left by Dante. Yeah, that's a big thing. And obviously on the Bridges side. First half was really worrying because offensively he was a complete dud, and obviously the defense wasn't there at all. They even tried to give him a free throw to try and get him going, and he absolutely botched that. The shot looked absolutely horrible. Thankfully, he started to get going in the second half. I think he went 2 of 3 from deep and 7 of 8 from the field in the second half, which obviously is a good sign because his shot looked pretty broken in Brooklyn for large periods last year, and during the preseason it was awful as well. So it was good to see him actually hit a few shots. Hopefully, he can get back into more of a flow because we need obviously we're going to need a bit of the playmaking that we sort of saw in Brooklyn, but really where we want to get Phoenix Suns, Mikal Bridges, that's what we want. Elite defensive player that people will mention in conversations for DPOY. Not to say he's going to be it because we already know who that's going to be, but that sort of level of defender and a 3-point shooter, a guy who's going to hit when he's open. And those are the two biggest things we need to get from Mikal out of this team.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the defensive side, I've seen some stuff this morning about how Mikal's defense is also atrocious because look at what Tatum just did. And I think that's unfair. I'm just gonna put that out there now because I think Mikal played fine and Tatum is a top 5 player in the NBA and he had his night. And that's something that is, when it comes down to it, better offense, great offense is gonna be great defense like that. And maybe this is a matchup thing. Maybe you'd rather have OG on him. But I mean, Mikal was fighting through screens. He was trying to get up in Tatum's grill. And the fact is, Celtics had enough spacing to get good screening actions for Tatum to get open. And I mean, Tatum was hitting everything. Like it wasn't fair to Mikal. And especially that like Jordan move close to the basket where he just like half spun and faded away. That's Mikal Bridges that's going to happen to him. Like Jason Tatum had one of probably the greatest opening night he's ever had, and you just got to tip your cap to him. So let's not blame Mikal for that. Let's get on the Cat. So I thought Cat throughout the preseason we saw some interesting stuff about how the Knicks were going to run their offense a lot through him, and the ball really did flow through him, but part of this is the Celtics defense being that aggressive on the perimeter and really staying home. And that's the sort of thing that Cat can struggle with at times is, okay, when do I be aggressive? I think that's kind of the question that we've seen with him in the Timberwolves, where he's too aggressive sometimes, he's getting in foul trouble, or the ball's not moving, or he's not being aggressive enough, and it's like there's an advantage. And how do you feel like he struck that balance in his first game as a Knick?
Yeah, he was a little bit too hesitant still. He did have some really pretty plays inside. There was a couple of times where he attacked the basket and finished really well. He did have a few nice plays. So he had an overall solid game, but yeah, that's not going to do it. Like we need him to be more aggressive. Obviously, like you said, we need him to be smart with it because he is very prone to stupid offensive fouls and getting into offensive trouble. And as we saw with our center rotation last night, that's going to be a huge problem if that's going to be something that we're going to see all year. If Cats get into foul trouble, that's going to be a big issue for us. But he was a bit standoffish last night, but I did like some of the plays when he was aggressive. He made a few really pretty plays inside, which I really loved. I think it's just a question of we're going to see it more. It's tough when you're going up against the Celtics on opening night to really see it branch out, but I think he's going to continue to get more confidence. He's going to understand more what the offensive scheme is throughout the year, and I think there's definitely something to grow on from last night.
Yeah, I think what I want to see from the DHOs in particular, I think there's a lot of times where you have a design DHO for Brunson to come off of Cat, and Cat doesn't really get any contact on the screen, and the Celtics are just going to switch anyway. And Cat's still standing in the same place, and Brunson doesn't have an advantage. Cat just stands there, and then you reset. And sometimes, at some point, even though Derek White and Drew Holiday are some of the best post defenders for their size and position, you just got to play inside out a little bit. You just got to keep them honest. You can't just keep putting a guard on Cat and letting them get away with that, because it was so easy. It was so easy for them just to get a switch and for the action to come to nothing. And I think what I did like to see there is maybe they weren't posting up more. They weren't getting deep post position, and which in reality, if you look at the game, how many times did you see Cat get deep into the post and then get a pass down there and really go to work? He didn't. I think they played a little too much, 5-out spacing, and they didn't really get enough opportunity for Cat to use his size to their advantage. But I feel like what I saw in the second half is you got a little bit more off-ball action with Mikal Bridges that helped get him going. And then you can start to sneak in some cutting actions off of Mikal. They had this one great play where Cat is at the wing, and then you have Mikal fake a screen to Brunson and then slip that, and Cat throws a great pass right under the rim. Easy layup.
Yeah.
Another great play where Cat's fakes a DHO to Brunson and cuts right to the basket. You get an open shot to Bridges. Like stuff like that. Stuff like that gets me interested in like where they can go with it. Because I think some of like the vanilla DHO actions they were running in the first half, the Celtics just didn't care. They just switched, said beat us 1-on-1, and then the Knicks just started taking dumb shots left and right because there wasn't really any rhythm to the offense.
And we
So
got
I think
so
there's
far
still so
behind, we
much
had to
room.
do it.
I
We were
know.
so far behind, they had to do it. Because like the Knicks actually shot 66% on their twos last night.
Yeah,
But
thanks to who?
but
Brunson.
yeah, but the Celtics were plus 54 from deep. Like that,
Yeah.
that's just what like the Knicks had to start to take, even though the shot wasn't falling from them, they had to take more threes. They had to go to that more because they just had no choice because they were so damn far behind. So yeah, like there's definitely positives there. There's absolutely no need to panic if you're the New York Knicks. Tough night. Congrats to the Celtics. Let's just say the Knicks were just being respectful on ring night, you know?
Yep. And well, my last thing to say on the Knicks, or two little things. Just looking at my notes as I was watching the game, I just have one, and it was so reminiscent of watching him play for the Bulls. I just had WTF campaign. If you start going your turn, my turn, and there's no flow to the offense, campaign is very willing, it's me time kind of player. So that just the 3 possessions he had where there's nothing happening, and your point guard just takes it upon himself to try and score the ball. I never want to see that again. And my last thing is OG. If we get more games like this, I think we need some scrutiny for him too. I think OG needs to find a way to get more involved on the offense, whether that's attacking the boards, whether that's moving more off the ball. And I know part of the scheme is for him to just space to the corner, but a guy that's being paid that much, a guy who is a great shooter, he needs to do more.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, last night was definitely bad from him. We definitely need to see more. The money we got from him, obviously, it was mainly because of his defense, but he has to do a lot more offensively for sure.
Let's get out west.
Yeah, as Anthony Davis said, finally the Lakers win on a big night for LeBron James, you know?
Seriously.
It's finally happened. And that's the Lakers' first win in 6 seasons on opening night as well.
It would I think it's 7. It was a
JJ
7
Redick is the
game.
prodigal son.
But when's the last time the Lakers were supposed to have a feel good night and they actually won on it? Like it's
Yeah,
been a while.
been forever.
It's
And,
been a
I
while.
don't think it's happened since what, Kobe's last game. That kind of
Pretty
feels like the
much.
last time.
So Redick gets his first win. They break the 7-year opening night losing streak. And I mean, listen, like I've been very not annoyed. Maybe I'm just a contrarian, so obviously like stuff like this is like I try not to be interested in it. But honestly, watching the Bronny and LeBron check in, like you couldn't help but be a fan of that. I
Yeah, of
really
course.
couldn't
No,
help but be a
it's
fan of it
just a
for
really
sure.
just a really nice moment. The
Yeah.
Lakers, they did it right. They didn't try to overdo it or anything like that. Almost had an assist from LeBron to Bronny on that triple that would have really put the icing on the cake. But
And Bronny almost had a like if he had that putback dunk, that would have been
yeah, he
that would have
also
been
had one
icing on the
moment where
cake.
he guarded Ant up real well and missed a
Yeah.
shot off the front of the rim. That was nice too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like nice little signs there. I wonder how long it's going to take for them to send him to the G League, but obviously great night for the LeBron James family, no doubt.
Yeah. And hey, I'm gonna be totally honest. Like, if Max Christie is not hitting jumpers and still not hitting jumpers, and you're gonna get that defensive effort from Bronny, listen, there's no reason why there's not a competition for him to take minutes from Christie if he can prove he can hit that perimeter shot, if he can still provide that same level of activity that Christie provides. Because this is another improve it year for outside rotation guy like Christie, and opening night didn't show enough. But let's get back to the big story though. Like AD.
Missing him in my fantasy team already, baby.
JJ talked obviously about how AD is going to be more focal point. LeBron's talking about it as well. And we all know AD can flip the switch. We've seen it. We've seen it in the bubble. We've seen it at times here and there throughout the regular season. And we just haven't seen it consistently. Is this going to be the year that AD really does flip the switch and he's back in his rightful place, as we've always felt, as like an MVP level top 5 player in this league?
I really want to say yes because I do believe he's got that ability, and like I want to say this is like the start of an MVP type season for AD because I'm not to say he's going to average 13, 16, 4 and 3 blocks per game, but I think he's more than capable of averaging like 27, 12 and probably three stocks per game on good efficiency. This guy is incredibly talented, incredibly dominant as an offensive player. If I believed in the Lakers winning enough games, I'd be backing AD to be able to get into the MVP conversation. Obviously, it's tough to say someone can be an MVP while playing with LeBron James. That's something I don't think we are going to see. But AD is an incredibly talented player on both ends of the floor. He can be obviously he doesn't have the transition option that Giannis has, but AD can match him in terms of being a two-way threat. AD can match Giannis. I wholeheartedly believe that. And obviously, we talk about Giannis being probably the second best player in the NBA these days. AD is not. It is absolutely close to that when he's at his best and when he's healthy because he is that dominant. It's just a question of can he continue to do it consistently? Can he continue to be healthy? That's what we're always going to be worrying about with AD. But I think the looks that he's going to get, the way he just did that all to Rudy Gobert last night, there's very
Mm-hmm.
few guys who are going to be able to slow down Anthony Davis when he's on it and he's locked in.
Yeah. Like, this is all stuff we've talked about where he needs to be aggressive offensively. He needs to be aggressive because when he's aggressive offensively, that's when he becomes like that level player. He becomes MB level player. He becomes I mean, honestly, a Jokic level player in terms of like how he can like force himself at the rim. And then now, the thing we wanted to see more of ever since the bubble is him taking jump shots.
Yeah.
And to his credit, he's taking more. And it was not just taking them, like, there's nothing else going on in the offense. He has to take this jumper. Like, he was taking it within the flow of the offense. There's no question that, it was part of the game plan for him to take as many open looks as he could. Took 3 threes, made one of them, and he's taking them from above
That's
the
all they
break.
need from him.
Yeah,
If he's
just to
doing that, if
keep the
that's what he
defense
averages for the
honest.
season, that's great. He's one of if he goes one make on 3 attempts for the entire season, that's great.
Yeah, and the mid range looks they looked good too. And I think I love the fact that he didn't need to take too many shots. Honestly, I mean most of his damage is like just really taken to Gobert, and we'll get to the Timberwolves in a second. But I think a big reason that the Timberwolves really didn't have a presence inside on both ends of the ball is because of Anthony Davis. He just dominated the paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that like he saw how much he enjoyed that block he got on Rudy Gobert that one time. That was
Yeah,
serious. That was a
yeah.
serious denial. He was ready for that. And then obviously it was fun seeing him chirp it a little bit with Ant at one point when he got an and one off of him. So obviously the little things like that are always fun. When you see AD really hyped up and really just in his element, that's when you know the Lakers are clicking, and that's when you know things are going good in La La Land when AD is in that sort of mood.
So let's get to the Wolves. So Wolves and Knicks make this trade. Clearly, there's still some adjusting to be done. And that's a natural part of adding and subtracting major pieces to your roster. Guys who don't have the chemistry yet. And it's going to make sense that on offense, there's going to be some clunkiness. There's going to be some times where, guys aren't making the pass at the right time. Guys aren't cutting off of each other at the right time. There's a couple times where Randall's just in the wrong spot. And that's to be expected. So we won't belabor those points too much because that's pretty obvious. But I think it was a little bit instructive to see the spacing, to see how the Lakers treated Randall defensively, especially when Gobert was on the floor. And I guess, how worried do we leave this opening night game where Chris Finch is making comments about not just their effort, but his his quote was, "This is my biggest fear," in terms of how clunky their offense looked and how little ball movement and sharing and chemistry there was.
Yeah, I mean, but that was also a problem last year. So I mean, it's not like, oh, just because, oh, they got Randall in. You kind of wonder, like, how big of an impact is losing Cat having on this team. There's probably a decent portion of the guys that obviously, and one of them that really liked Cat, that are probably really hurt that he's no longer in the team, because this Wolves team last year really did feel like that real close knit group. So there might be a little bit of a hangover from that. I'm hope like that shouldn't continue. The guys have to be professional. So maybe there's a little bit of that element involved in it too. I was more worried about the defensive end. Defensively, they looked completely incoherent. They were not, didn't look anything close to the same team they were last year. Offensively, we saw this last year, which is it is the big worry, that we saw this slow, uncohesive sort of offensive unit that relied too heavily on isolation, and relied too heavily sometimes on Anthony Edwards to make things happen. That's what we saw again last night. Hopefully that will start to change as Randall gets used to it, as they figure out how to play this offense with Julius Randle. But yeah, I think the defense would be more of a worry for me than the offense. I feel like the offense is something that you can understand it being still the way that it is. The defense, the effort on the defensive end, and just the general play of the defense was not at the level that it was last year. And I don't think you can just say they lost Cat, that's the reason. That's not true.
I I, I don't know. I'll push back on that a little bit because I think Cat's defense was super underrated last year, especially in the way that he played in the drop, the way that he used his size around the rim to at least be a deterrent. No, he was not a upper tier rim protector, but he was a rim protector when they needed him to be. And he did stay active on the perimeter when they needed him to. And if you look at that second unit, there was just absolutely no deterrent at the rim. And that speaks to the Lakers as well. Like, their strength, they really showed it, is on the boards and in the paint. Like, they use their size, their physicality, getting downhill, and they really impose themselves there. But the second unit with Naz Reid and Julius Randle, that looks tough. And they just need to be tougher at the point of attack. I mean, plain and simple. Like, they can't, there's no backline help if Cat's not there, if Gobert's not there, and they need to just be strong at the point of attack. And I think they will be. I think it's weird to say that's an effort thing because this is a team that's built on effort. Their defense is built on effort. What they did last season was built on tenacious point of attack defense with the backline of Rudy Gobert. And that was the backbone of what brought them nearly to the NBA Finals. So they need to find that again. And whether that means just, coalescing and coming together and just getting that chemistry down and fighting for it, and this is just an off night, or maybe that means, bringing in other guys.
Yeah.
Do you have any young guys like Leonard Miller who's ready to, eat up 10 minutes and put out some effort? That's kind of a lot of what guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid do. They come off the bench, they show that energy, and it really kind of energizes the whole team. And it didn't feel like they had a moment like that last night.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that that Luka Garza didn't get on the floor at all because he had a pretty
You
big
big
preseason.
Garza guy this
I
year.
like I
Where did
like
that come
Garza.
from?
I don't know. There's something about him that I like, and he had a really big preseason. He
Yeah,
was probably their best player during preseason, and then to not even
yeah,
get a minute in a game where
yeah,
they were losing by double digits for pretty much the whole thing, and the Lakers were pretty much in control. He didn't get on the floor once. That was a little bit disappointing, but maybe that's just what Chris Finch is seeing. He just doesn't believe in him being able to do enough, I guess, defensively to be able to
yeah,
warrant minutes, which is fair enough. But yeah, it's just it was a weird performance from the Wolves. Obviously, Ant was still doing his thing. I like how his shot was looking. If that's going to continue, that's going to be big for them. But the Wolves are definitely just kind of a wait and see. Obviously, Dante came in just doing his Dante thing. He looked absolutely fine, fit in pretty well within that team. Obviously, he's that type of player you can kind of just plug and play in pretty much in most systems. But yeah, just wait and see on the Wolves. I'm going to be interested to see what we're seeing now and how it looks a month from now. That's going to be very interesting with Minnesota.
yeah. I'm not when it comes to Randall. That's definitely wait and see. I want to see how. Like one thing that takes a little bit more chemistry is when he's getting doubled in the paint. And every team knows that it's a playbook done 100 times over. If Randall gets a touch in the paint, he's a great post player, but doesn't do well with double teams. We all know this. They already started sending double teams, and there wasn't really that quick, snappy decision making because he doesn't necessarily know where his guys are,
Yeah.
and that kind of took away from any advantage they had with it. But we saw last year, like he became a better passer in New York before he got hurt. So I think there's room to grow there. There's room to grow with him being more aggressive in the right times because he needs to be 2B or 1B. I think he has a place to be more aggressive in this offense that he wasn't. And I think for the right reasons, I like the fact that Randall was really looking to pass, but it was at the detriment to the team, like ironically, that he was doing so. And that balance, it's better to work backwards for Randall and have him shoot more than to try to convince him to pass because I think that's a good mindset he's entering there. Um, Last thing on the Wolves is Mike Conley. Um, it's one game. Like again, we're not going to overreact to anything, but I think it's as we go through this first month and kind of see the important dynamics with each team. I think there are some questions that a lot of wait and see questions that need to be answered, and I think we've been waiting for a couple of years now to see how much longer Mike Conley has, how much he has left in the tank, and we saw it fall off a little bit in the playoffs. Um, he did not play well. Like he just wasn't there. He had no impact on the game, and he's a guy that is sneakily one of the most important pieces to the Wolves because I mean they have Anthony Edwards and who else to play make, and Conley really just didn't have the juice to do it last night, and that begs the question of when do you start to consider getting Rob Dillingham minutes?
Yeah.
If not for the purpose of this season, for the purpose of next season. Because if we start to continue to see the decline of Conley this season, then it's about his replacement, who's going to be the point guard moving forward. And yes, Dillingham's small, he's a rookie, he's not ready, but what better way to get him ready than at least throwing him some minutes here and there, especially if Conley's starting to, he just needs some more rest. You're going to get more out of him if he's rested.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason they traded for him. It wasn't just for the future. They need to see an impact from him this year. The Wolves, if they're gonna sustain their top three seed in the Western Conference, they're gonna need production from Rob Dillingham this year. Like obviously Conley he kind of just didn't really just kind of faded out of the game. Like the Lakers, I think the Lakers probably took the Timberwolves by surprise a little bit last night. How hard
Mm-hmm.
the Lakers played.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily something that we've seen before. How hard they played. How in your face they were defensively, trying to get out in transition, trying to play a bit quicker. That's not really something we've seen from the Lakers before. So maybe that took the Wolves a little bit by surprise. But obviously Conley didn't get a shot up until I think it was midway through the third quarter, maybe early third quarter. You can't have that from your point guard, the guy who's got the ball in his hands as much as Mike Conley does. So yeah, the Dillingham question is definitely going to be interesting because I said this as soon as I saw them trade for him. I was like, that's an aggressive move because they know they need production from another playmaker this year, not just for the future as
Yeah.
well.
Bro, I'm gonna say it right now. If they need Dillingham to play significant minutes this year, they're not a top 3 seed.
That's fair. That's fair.
If they need Dillingham right now, then I'm very worried about where they're going to be, because I think it's very underrated, the impact that Mike Conley has had on this team the past couple of years, especially
I
last
say
season.
significant. I'm saying good 10 to 15 minutes per game. And I think that's significant
Yeah,
considering what they've had previously, which is kind of
yeah.
nothing.
I guess I don't even mean the minutes, but like if it's I agree that we need to give him the minutes, that he needs to have the time so that he can grow into it. So maybe there's a spot 10 minutes where you just need like a little burst of scoring, and that's nice. Like kind of like a Jaden Hardy, what like the stuff that he did. But if we're talking Mike Conley has sunk to the level where it's like, hey, we need Dillingham just to really get this offense going, because Mike Conley's just not it at the end of the season, then we're talking like, I don't want to be dramatic and say play-in team, but Mike Conley's impact is very, it will be severely missed if this is the kind of version we're going to get for him for the rest of the season. Obviously, he's not going to go 1 for 7 every single night. That's not going to happen. But if he's taken a big step back and they need Rob Dillingham to fill in that gap, he's just not ready to do it. And I
Yeah.
have really serious concerns about him. And it's game 1, and we're not going to like, I'm not going to go too crazy on it, but it does beg the question of, do we give him more minutes? And if we are, I think this is a future thing. This isn't a now thing, and they're going to be severely missing who Mike Conley was.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that. Before we move on, to say the last thing on the Lakers, obviously he did a good job protecting the ball last night. Only 7 turnovers, which is good. Again, dominant inside the arc, shot 56% inside the arc, 21 of 24, 21 of 25 at the free throw line. We know that's what the Lakers do. 3-point shooting still wasn't there. They went 5 of 30 from deep. That's just going to be the thing we have to continue to watch the Lakers all year. Do they have enough shooting? That was the problem last year. They haven't really done anything to get more shooting in. That's where we're going to need to see the impact from Christie, from Dalton Connect. That's where we're going to see that start to go up a little bit. That's going to be the question. Great start for the Lakers. Looked good. If they're going to play this hard and he's going to be this aggressive all year, they could possibly make a push to get out of the play-in and finish as a top 6 seed. But the shooting is the area that we're still going to have to watch closely with this team.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to see more from Connect.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see more from him. Like, just seeing the minutes that he had last night. Most rookies in their first game, like, you're not going to see that level of confidence that we saw from him. And I think that speaks to the Lakers organization, JJ Redick and his teammates, in terms of making him feel comfortable to play the way he did. But I think you can see a whole lot more from him, because that first shot he took, just zero hesitation. Then driving down the lane, he had an opportunity, but I mean, he was 1 on almost 3. He was 1 on 2 when he got to the rim, and just to have the confidence to do that tells me that, especially on an opening night like that, tells me that he has a confidence to work in an expanded role. And I think that he's not going to be the only source of threes, but he's going to be a big reason for them to get back to that. And I did like the threes they did take. I like the fact that they were playing so well inside. They didn't have to force it to the perimeter, but there was no hesitance, and there was some good spacing that we saw. I think that was better than last year.
Yeah, and amazingly, D'Lo's hair wasn't the worst thing about last night. It was actually his
Yeah, that
performance.
we don't gotta talk about that. That was, I don't even know what that was. I don't know. That was like
it,
boy band blonde. I kind of like it.
it,
I kind of dig it. I don't know.
No, I wasn't vibing with it, and then his performance just when you do something like that to your hair, you got to really ball out. And then D'Lo was terrible. His shot looked way off. I mean, he had an open look from 3 at one point that he airballed, and Rudy Gobert literally just caught the thing before it even reached the rim. It was so bad. I don't know what was going on with his shot, but yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting now for the internet to break when Dalton Connect has a 4-point play, or when he finishes with 4 points, and we get the whole Connect 4 thing going on. That's the next thing to watch for the Los Angeles Lakers. But wrapping up on the games, let's go on to some of the contract extensions we've seen over the last few days.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of big veteran ones that we'll jump into them first. Team we just talked about, Minnesota Timberwolves, announced right before the game last night that Gobert has agreed to a 3-year, $110 million extension. where he's going to decline his $46 million option for next year, which is obviously huge for them. That gives them that little bit more flexibility. I think 3 years, 110 for a guy that you are clearly relying on to anchor your defense. That's a good deal for them, and it gives them that little bit of flexibility that they needed.
Yeah, and in terms of money, let's just think about the actual chunk that is compared to the salary cap and the players that are making that much. We're talking about a Derek White, Devin Vassell type of deal. Like that's what he's going to be on. And yes, it's long term. You're locked in for 3 more years, and you're betting that he's going to continue to have this impact as he continues to age. But what it ultimately allows them to do is to keep their core, and that's why they've made these moves. That's why they traded off Cat, because they believe in their depth. And it's funny because both fan bases last night are thinking, "Wow, we made a huge mistake." One, the Knicks getting rid of Randall and Dante, and then missing Cat in Minnesota. But both teams I think are going to be fine. But I think the extension really, it speaks to their commitment to Naz Reid, speaks to their commitment to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who did show out last night. And I mean, good on them. I think it's a good deal.
Really good deal for them. I think Gobert can continue to be productive. Maybe I don't think he might be kind of be on the decline by the time this deal comes to an end. But I think in terms of the value and in terms of the role that he's playing on this team to get him at that value, I think really good deal for Minnesota. Aaron Gordon, the Nuggets finally paid up Aaron Gordon and a 4-year, $133 million deal. They had no choice here.
Yeah. Same with the deal they had for Murray. I mean, you just have to keep the core together, and we knew it was coming. And Gordon, I think just looking back, I think the one thing to say about this contract is that looking back, ever since they got Gordon on this team, he's been the galvanizing force that has transformed them from a really good team to a championship level team. So I mean, good on him to get locked up, and we'll see what the Nuggets continue to do this season. But that's a good deal for both sides. They needed it.
Yeah, and obviously a good sign for Nuggets fans just generally. You're seeing the deal get done so early. Like that was probably something that could have been hanging over the team and hanging over the player all year, and then them fearing that they're not gonna re-sign him. So it's a great feel for the team going into the new season that they've got him locked down.
Yeah.
Then the rookies. Rookies are a little bit more interesting. Let's start out in Atlanta. We'll go through them all. We'll make a call on if it's a good, bad, or somewhere in the middle deal here. Let's start in Atlanta. Jalen Johnson.
Yeah.
5 years, $150 million.
That one is interesting because I think that I'm curious how many other teams would have been bidding for him. I think the intel in Atlanta tells us they're very high on Jalen Johnson. And I think a lot of people who pay attention to Jalen Johnson last year, I mean, either think he's a very, very high level role player, borderline all-star, or maybe he's got a little bit more to do some special stuff. And I think we talked about him a little bit, whether last week or the week before, but I mean, Jalen Johnson showed signs of not just being a rim runner, but the 3-point shots coming along, mid-range is coming along, the playmaking is coming along. He's like in the midst of developing into a very good player. So I think it's a fair deal for both sides. It's not a steal by any means. It's a pretty steep long-term commitment. But if we're looking at the tail end of this at 30 million, if he is an all-star level player, I mean, this is a guy that I think, can make this contract look really good or just right. So I think it's pretty good deal for the Hawks.
Yeah, I think they've found a nice space for both sides where Jalen Johnson's been more than compensated for what he's achieved so far in this year, and the Hawks are kind of paying it a little bit into the potential that he might have. So I think there's a good balance within this deal, and I think the Hawks fully believe that Jalen Johnson's going to be their standout 2-star this year after Trae Young, and I think he can be too. I mean, he was a big part of what they were doing last year. And then when he got hurt, things dropped off a little bit. Like you notice when he was not on the floor last year, that last year was really his breakout moment. And this year, you expect him to do something similar. Like I'm expecting him to average somewhere around about 18 points, 10 boards a game. Like that's what he's capable of as the athlete that he is and just as the all around player that he is. So this is going to be a big year for him, and I think there's going to be moments, especially this season and beyond, where people are going to be thinking this contract's an absolute steal because that's how much talent Jalen Johnson does have.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan. I think it lands just right if he's that, that high level, maybe not all-star, but the perfect kind of piece next to Trae Young, perfect complementary piece, perfect connecting piece for the rest of the team, switchable defender. What he is right now and what we think he should be the next couple of years, it's a fair deal. But I think a lot of people think it's going to be he could elevate further to be an all-star level player, and that's going to be a steal near the tail end of that contract. That's why you give those long-term deals, and it's great to kind of transition from there, thinking about the deal that they're going to have at the tail end, and then look at Houston now because you got two very different rookie extensions there. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's start with Jalen Green. Interesting that it's a 2+1 rookie extension. We have not seen that, I don't think,
Ever.
ever.
First time. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this is that if you look at Jalen Johnson's contract, it's those last couple of years that could be a great deal where you have a guy who's developed, blossomed into, let's say, borderline or all-star level player, and he's on an absolute steal of a contract. Jalen Green, he's up in 2 years when you're kind of projecting, hey, this might be the time that he's going to blossom into that type of player. And he's got a player option. So I'm curious what that's going to look like if he does end up proving himself. Because we all believe that he's either boom or bust. And that's going to be an interesting situation they're in a couple of years if he does achieve that level. Because I don't know if they'll be able to afford him with all the other rookie extensions they want to get done.
Yeah, it's interesting. The big thing you look at it and just say that it's a very tradable contract.
Yes, that is what I was thinking exactly too.
That appears to be the route that Houston have gone with that deal. They have made it a very tradable contract, whereas they still have him locked down for at least 2 years, but they know they can move him if a big fish becomes available. But they also know that if he were to pop off this year and next year, they could be in a position to renegotiate from there. So I think that the Rockets have put themselves in a very good position here with the Jalen Green contract. Whether it works out for them, maybe it could come back to bite them. But I think they've made the right call with, I think, the angle that I'm taking from this is that it's a very tradable deal where it doesn't put them out of the conversation of renegotiating and extending them on it if he really does start to pop off.
So we then compare this to the Sengun deal, where he's locked up for 5 years, but a little bit less money than his peers. Do we think that 5-year 185 compared to the other guys in his draft, the Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, who I think most people objectively would say Sengun's been more productive.
Mm-hmm.
He's done more and on slightly better team now at this point. So it's interesting that he took that deal. Is that a bad deal for Sengun, or does he need to kind of capture this moment, especially on a Rockets team where there's so much volatility?
Yeah, it's tough. When you think of someone like a Franz Wagner, I'd say it's a bad deal, but I think in the context of the team and the role that he plays, I think it probably is a fair deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is so much talent within this team. They are like right on the cusp, it feels like, of breaking into that conversation of a legit playoff team in the NBA. And with Ime Udoka as the head coach, like, this Houston team is on the rise. So he's locked into a really great situation, I believe, in Houston. And last year was really his breakout year. Of course, the injury was there. So I guess there's still that fear with that. But I think this could turn into a situation where Sengun will be looking to renegotiate as soon as he possibly can. But I think for now, I think it's probably a fair deal on both ends, and I understand why he took it.
Yeah. I just look at him though, and he is. I mean, look at Sabonis. Sabonis last year agreed to a 5-year, $217 million extension as a veteran. And I think that's pretty good comparison as a big man who's an offensive hub, rebounding machine, interior force, but has some question on the defensive end. That's kind of probably the archetype of what kind of deal he would have had available to him. And he doesn't even have the veteran advantage. So I think even though a lot of people are high in Sengun, now that he's making the money, I also have the question of like, how are we going to view him now? Are people going to now view him, compare him to the contract, and then start talking about his defense? Because that hasn't really happened. It's all been
Yeah.
all been relative to, him being a younger player, him making less money. So I hope we continue to kind of like look at him with the glass half full approach. Not really thinking about his defense, but thinking about how prolific he's been on the other end. But the deal makes sense for him. We don't
Yeah.
know where this team's going to go, and he needs to lock that up because, we wouldn't. I don't think we'd be shocked if nothing happened, and by the end of the season, somehow the trajectory of the Rockets was going away from him, and then
Mhm.
where would his fortunes lay?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it was important for him to get locked in. And let's not forget, pretty sure he'll only be 25 when he's able to renegotiate as well, possibly for a new extension, which is also pretty impressive. Like the age of
Yeah,
this guy, like he's still
only 22.
so much money that's going to be on the table down the line for sure. So like the moves from Houston, a little bit surprised that they went and did both of them, and then like it took right up until the deadline to get them both done. But I think smart moves from them on both sides, and I think good deals for the players as well.
Yeah, I love the deal with Jalen Green. Now that you're talking about the flexibility of it, because they can still keep the back end guys if they continue to develop and move Jalen Green for something else if that's not your direction, and other teams will be willing to use that as a reclamation project, especially at that price.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, Obvious one we kind of knew was coming. Jalen Suggs, 5 years, 150.5 mil. Good deal.
Yeah, I mean, they I liken him to a Derek White type of player, and I think they would as well. He's going to be a key part of what Ben Carroll will do moving forward in the Orlando Magic. I think he's the X factor that will be a big piece of whether or not they are moving into, like a top four seed situation and being like, I don't know, man. I think a lot of people want to believe in the Magic, and I do too. And I think Suggs is a big part of that. So I think you got to pay up, you got to pay long term, and you got to believe that the shooting last year is real. You got to believe that the playmaking is continuing to rise. And if Derek White is the model and Derek White is, that level of contract that he just got, then this deal makes sense. I think it's good for both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if the shooting is real and the playmaking develops a little bit more. This is going to be a great deal because the impact that he has as a defender. Another quick one, Corey Kispert, 4 years, 54 million. Not too much to say
Out of
there.
nowhere. Yeah,
The
sure.
Wizards, who really cares? Jaden Hardy, 3 years, 18 mil. I like to think that's a good deal. I think that's an area that the Mavericks could possibly take advantage of if he can continue to grow into a role where he's actually playing a role that's significant on this team. That could prove a great deal.
I want to say home run for the Mavs. I
Mm,
think Hardy has not. He's a kind of slow grower, I think, and we've seen some flashes of him, not just improving on the offensive end, because I think we know what he can do on the offensive end at his peak, but defensively looks decent. He's not a finished product there. He's not even close to a finished product on offense, I don't think. But as another guy who could create for you, and I think showed that he had enough juice to do it in limited time in the playoffs. How much more are you going to get out of him this year? I mean, 3 for 18 million, I think, is a steal for a guy that I think could be, you know, at least your six man, if not
yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah. Totally agree on that one. Then the last one, Trey Murphy, 4 years, 112 mil. I think
Is that a
I'm
steal?
gonna say steal for the Pels right there.
Is that a
I
steal?
feel
Yeah,
like it's
I'm
gonna be a
super high
steal.
on Trey. Super
Yeah,
high on Trey. Obviously the injury, and he's not been fully healthy. That's been kind of a story as old as time for the Pels and their wings. But a guy that's going to defend at that level, a guy who's going to rebound at that level, a guy who's going to hit threes at a very high clip and on volume at that level. Um, Look at the money that Michael Porter Jr. is making.
yeah,
I think Trey Murphy is a Michael Porter Jr. level shooter. I think Michael Porter Jr. has him probably beat there, but in terms of his versatility on defense, terms of what he does on the boards as well, like that's a great deal for the Pels. They needed to lock him up, and for a good deal too, that gives them additional flexibility. That's good business.
Yeah, now the Pels, if you can just figure out how to get rid of Brandon Ingram and how to get an actual center, and then we'll be things will actually look like they're starting to make sense in New Orleans. But that's definitely yeah, definitely like that deal for them. That wraps it up on the rookie extensions. Let's talk about the two big ones that we didn't see go down. Josh Giddey and Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah.
No real surprise with Kuminga. I think the whole feeling was that he wanted a max extension.
Yeah.
Warriors had no interest in offering that. I think they want the flexibility to still be able to trade him if a piece were to become available, especially mid-season this year. Josh Giddey's an interesting one. The way things have gone with the Bulls, how unsurprising would it be for them to take the chance on letting Giddey go and earn the contract this year and then lose him for nothing next year?
It's the nightmare situation, right? Where Caruso, a guy that a lot of people would have argued, not to rehash the whole conversation, but a guy who had first round value, some would say 2 first round picks when the bidding war was going on during the trade deadline, then go for nothing besides Josh Giddey, who we have major questions on what he looks like on a competitive team because, hey, he didn't cut in Oklahoma. So let's just say this. If he proves himself this season, like truly proves himself, that means that he's definitely earned it because the guard room is just full. You got Kobe, you got Zach LaVine coming back. I mean, Lonzo's only playing 15 minutes, but in the limited minutes you saw, he looked like Lonzo. Like he did. And we've talked about if Lonzo is Lonzo, he is a better player than Josh Giddey. Like that is not even a question. The question is just the health. And then not even talk about Ayo Dosunmu, what kind of impact he's going to have. So there's just a lot of competition for being the guy, let alone being a guard on this team. So Josh Giddey not getting extension, maybe not surprising me, but I don't think he'll go for nothing next year because if he ends up earning it, then he earned it in the face of a lot of competition, and clearly he would have upgraded himself to a degree where he deserves it. Is it risky? Yes. Is it going to work out? Probably not. It's the Bulls. I wouldn't be surprised if we lost him for nothing. But this is what it is, man. We just got to blow it up. It doesn't matter if Giddey's good or not. I still don't think he's going to make an impact where the Bulls are really going to change anything. And maybe that's kind of the reason why it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't super convinced that that management was sold on Giddey being like this revitalizing force that was going to change the fortunes of this team. I don't think that was ever the idea.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just going to be like so Bulls that they end up kind of losing Caruso without getting a pick and a player they just get a 1 year rental on. That's just, it feels like that's how it's going to play out because of everything that Chicago does. It just feels like it's the wrong thing in terms of how to build a winning roster. Obviously, that started with bad luck when what happened with Lonzo, the injuries LaVine has faced. It started with bad luck, but now it's kind of just moving into bad decisions on top of bad luck, which is like you keep saying, they just need to wipe the slate clean and start all over again. But it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on both of them. How Giddey performs this year. Does Kuminga get traded? Do the Warriors cave? Do they pay him the money next year? He's a very interesting piece to watch moving forward. But more importantly, we have actual NBA basketball to watch. Things really get going tonight. Got a big slate of games. Then we got some more fun ones on TNT tomorrow. I know we got the Spurs and the Mavs tomorrow, and the Thunder and the Nuggets. Those should both be really good games. Knicks have their chance to bounce back against Indiana in the home opener on Friday. NBA basketball is back, and it feels so good.
Yep. Don't forget the Celtics and Wizards on Friday. Big one.
Yeah, that's a very important game. Easy dub for the Wizards. Jordan Poole's gonna go absolutely.
Is this the year
nuts.
Jordan Poole comes back?
I mean, maybe the Wizards are certainly hope so. So
Well,
maybe
I know
maybe
that
he can lead them to 10 wins. We'll see. But that's gonna do it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. Enjoy the return of the NBA season. Feels like we waited forever, but it's back now, and we'll be here to cover it all for you. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Remember, we are everywhere on social media at Coast to Coast NBA. And most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.
Peace out.